Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's council meeting. I'm going to call it to order at this point, and I'm going to invite Councillor Uhrig to read our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis people and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters.
Thank you, and I'll just invite you to join me in a moment of silent reflection on today's business. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, just a reminder, you can bring it forward if it occurs to you at any time. Announcements. Do we have some announcements around the horseshoe? I'm going to start with Councillor Uhrig and come around.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Robert Bircher sent me an email, and I think he sent it out to a number of people. Just really pleased to announce that he has now 2 Royal Oaks that can be moved to Beautiful Joe Park. So he's speaking to the Beautiful Joe Society right now about where those can go. Just a reminder for people that may not understand that correlation that the Royal Oaks were planted in Meaford to honor King George VI back in the 30s. So it's hopefully Mr. Bircher is thinking of Victoria Day and is thinking that it would be appropriate to have some kind of a ceremony. So just wanted to bring that up for council to consider. So he's going to be in touch with his discussions with Beautiful Joe about that, but it would be nice to have some kind of recognition from the municipality at that event. So
thank you. Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, it's still almost a month away, but I think it's worthwhile marking on your calendar. Meaford St. Vincent Ag Society is going to be putting on a beef dinner Saturday, April 27th, and that'll be at the Curling Club. And I apologize. I believe there are 2 settings. I'll have to find out more and mention that at another meeting.
Okay, and Deputy Mayor Keaveney.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Good afternoon, everyone. And with your indulgence, I have 2 announcements today. The first one on behalf of the Rotary Club of Meaford. This Saturday will be the annual Easter egg hunt, noon, at Beautiful Joe Park. The Easter Bunny will, of course, appear, and there will be other events for children. There is a designated area for the youngest to gather their eggs. And last year, as a Rotarian, I can say we bagged 700 bags of candy, which disappeared in less than 3 minutes. So don't be late. And you must register ahead of time on the Rotary website, forms.gleash/DCTILYMMBT at 6RYSRT8. So go to the Rotary website, you'll find it. My second announcement, this last Saturday was the annual politicians meeting in Elmwood. There was great attendance, but I missed you all there. And while I've still got my Rotary hat on, if this were a Rotary meeting, I'd be fining you all a quarter. In any event, it was a great day, and there were 2 really significant discussions. One revolved around the impacts of urban sprawl as we know it on farmland. It's been calculated, but that within Grey County, we have lost 107 hectares of farmland to development. So it's not nearly as much as Simcoe County and so on, but something that we're keeping an eye on. The beef producers were interesting. They talked about the amount of meat being exported to countries like Japan and Vietnam, where it's very common in a grocery store to see Canadian meat in the frozen section. And apparently they have quite a significant display talking about where the meat came from. And they do send inspectors over here to the farms where they purchase the meat. So that's that was quite interesting. And there was another presentation by a gentleman from the OFA, but he has connections within the energy industry. And he talked about the need, of course, for energy. This was significant. By 2050, ISO projects that hydro will need 2.18 million acres of land to produce 88,000 megawatts of power. Currently, our capacity is 42,000, so more than double in that time frame. The cost to undertake these projects is estimated to be $400 billion. So it's huge numbers, and obviously a lot of work to do in the discussion centered around the different types of projects, and certainly the battery energy storage projects that we have one coming to our area potentially, and so do most of the other lower tiers. So there was a really good discussion on that. And finally, there was a discussion on bale wrap. There is apparently an end market in China. So discussions are underway about how we can start gathering that plastic and how it can be made financially feasible to get it cleaned and exported to China. So thank you very much. And hopefully next year you'll all put that in your calendars to come out to Elmwood.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that we received a fairly substantial handout from the OFA, which we delinquent members of council should certainly apprise ourselves of. Other announcements on this side of the horseshoe? Seeing none, any announcements from staff?
I do. I have two good news announcements, which is a wonderful position to be in. The first is that I'm sure council will join me in congratulating our environmental services team because they've obtained 100% on the latest ministry water inspections at both the Leith and the Meaford water treatment plants. This is a really, really impressive achievement and really shows the dedication of the team to producing our water and maintaining the facilities. Even more importantly, the two inspections were unannounced this year. So it's not like that these were being prepared for in a specific way. So they dropped in and we achieved 100%. So I think that's a wonderful thing that I'd like to congratulate the team on. The other piece of good news is that we've received a grant for around about $20,000 for what's called the Grand Pals program. This is a program that's been put together via the Wellbeing team in partnership with the library and the recreational programming team, and is basically some funding to link up young members of our community with some more experienced members of the community and have them get together in a kind of a mentorship relationship over a period of time. And again, I think it's really good that when we get these sort of grants that allow us to put on some additional programming across the municipality.
Thank you. I think we're ready then to move into public participation. Members of the public are always encouraged to provide council with their comments and questions. Presentations must be prearranged with legislative services before the agenda is released and are limited to 10 minutes. If a member of the public wishes to make a deputation on items on the council agenda or to ask a public question of council, they may do so either in person at the council chambers or remotely via Zoom, phone, or internet. Members of the public wishing to make a deputation or ask a public question must register in advance with legislative services by 10 in the morning on the day of the meeting. And you can do that by contacting Deputy Clerk at meaford.ca, all lowercase, or calling 519-538-1060, extension 1100. An email with access information will be sent to those who register for remote participation. Deputations are limited to 5 minutes and public questions to 2 minutes. And a reminder, the public can watch this meeting live via the Municipality of Meaford's YouTube channel, www.meaford.ca/YouTube. And we have a presentation this afternoon from it's our Integrity Commission annual report for 2023 from Principals Integrity. And I'd like to introduce Jeff Abrams and Janice Atwood-Petrowski. Are you on the line, Jeff?
It's Janice Atwood. Yes, I am, Your Worship. I'm on the line. I guess you can't see me, so you can just hear me. And thank you for making time today to hear from me. We are bringing you our annual report. It's euphemistically, we call it an annual report because in some cases it covers a couple of years, as does our report to you this afternoon. So we basically use this as an opportunity to sort of outline what an integrity commissioner does, again, for your benefit and for the public's benefit. And then to bring you some statistical information with respect to our activity on your behalf. And we finally conclude our report with a few takeaways that we've observed around the province, given our vantage point. We serve about 60 municipalities at this point across Ontario. So as you'll see in the annual report, we have a bit of a graphic that demonstrates really what the whole framework of an integrity commissioner is about. And that is, we are available to consult with yourselves in the development of policies such as a code of conduct. We are available to yourselves on an individual basis to seek advice. And the advice that we provide to you, members of council, is both individual confidential advice, and we try to provide that in a timely manner. And it's binding advice, so that if you provide us with the facts and we provide you with our advice, as long as you conduct yourself in a way that aligns with our advice, you are basically bulletproofed in the event of a complaint. So that's really the intention with the advisory function that we provide. And in terms of our ability to look at complaints, that's really that's what the public thinks of when they think of an integrity commissioner. They think of the hammer that comes down on the head of a member of council. And we really lean hard into coaching and training and course correction when we have the opportunity. So we, Jeff and I, through Principles Integrity, tend to really steer into opportunities for training, for course correction, for improvement, sometimes an apology, to be able to move forward without necessarily bringing a public report. So all of this is really intended to provide the public with the confidence that their local elected officials are operating in an ethical manner, and to provide the resources to members of council to do so. So in the body of the report, we provide some statistics to you. Now, when we provide advice to a member of council, as I said, that advice is confidential to the member of council, and we do not release or provide that or publish that or issue that. So it's the member themselves who has the opportunity to have that advice. So we do not itemize the details of what the advice is, but we, over the period covered by this report, have responded to 17 requests for advice. And in a vast majority of cases, advice really is on the subject of conflicts of interest, but there are other topics that members sometimes ask about. So that has been our activity with respect to providing advice. We also, in terms of complaints, now when we receive a complaint, of course, we triage that, and we call it triage at the front end, to determine, is it within jurisdiction? Is it an operational matter, in which case we just refer them to back to staff, to the appropriate staff? Is it a matter that is capable of course correction? And if it is, then, as I said, we do lean hard into trying to obtain course correction where possible. When we do that, we conclude the complaint with a disposition letter back to the complainant to explain why we will not be taking it further, or why the matter in our view is resolved satisfactorily. And we provide a copy of that disposition to the member in question so that they understand how the matter has been concluded, but we don't issue a public report. So we only issue a public report when we find a complaint has been substantiated and no real opportunity for course correction presents itself. So in the period covered by this report to you, we have received 7 complaints, all of which have been concluded with disposition letters, and none of which have resulted in a public report to council. So in a sense, we think this is the framework functioning as it was intended to function. And we think council demonstrates its understanding that where members need their individual advice, they obtain it and avoid any of the pitfalls that might otherwise lead to complaints. We also, because of our vantage point, take this opportunity to provide a little bit of highlight, I guess, of what we see around the province raising issues, and not necessarily at all in Meaford, but we just see these, we observe sort of from a 30,000-foot level. Here are some of the things that sometimes cause consternation to the public and result in complaints to us. So one of the areas is leaked information or disclosure, improper disclosure of confidential information from closed meetings. And whether that is advertent or inadvertent, it is problematic. So we treat that as a cardinal breach because it really, left unchecked, can destroy trust among council and among staff who need to bring information and advice to council. Non-disparagement. So this is an area, disparagement is an area where we see arise frequently, where members engage in disparaging comments, whether about each other, about members of the public, or about staff. And there's sort of a continuum of disparagement that may start with mild incivility and microaggressions, eye rolling, turning away, sort of comments under one's breath, that kind of thing. And it can really go to the other end of the continuum where it's name calling and that kind of thing. And we sometimes see this in face-to-face relations, and more likely we see it more often in social media. So we always discourage disparagement. We say the code will apply to members of council no matter what medium, and they should always treat each other and others with courtesy and respect. They may disagree, but they shouldn't be disagreeable in doing so. I think I mentioned conflicts of interest. That's an area that arises frequently, and members need to be mindful of where they may face potential conflict of interest and seek advice when they need it and step away from the matter if necessary. And finally, we see often, or from time to time, members sort of trying to take the reins to resolve a problem without doing a proper handoff to staff. And we encourage members to recognize that they should be staying in their lane. They're the governing body, but they're there to set policy, to set direction, and to hold staff accountable through the CAO for implementing directions of council. They are not individually really authorized to step in and take the reins and try to resolve matters for a constituent directly. So those are sort of our overview comments. As I say, those aren't directly aimed at Meaford at all. These are simply observations that we note. And in conclusion, I'm happy to take questions, and we appreciate the time this afternoon.
Thank you, Janice. Are there any questions for her? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner, and thank you for the talk and looking after us so well. My question is, if there's a complaint towards a councillor, would that councillor ever know about the complaint? What I heard you say was they would know when you'd have a decision and send the letter out. Is that correct or not?
Yes, through the mayor, that is correct. If in either event, the member would know if there's a complaint. So for example, if we had a complaint come in and we looked at the complaint and determined that really there's nothing to substantiate it, or even though it may name a councillor, it's really a complaint, for example, about a council decision rather than about any conduct of an individual member of council, then we would respond back to the complainant with a disposition letter. And if a counselor is identified as a respondent in that complaint, that counselor would get a copy, a summary, basically, of the disposition so that they would know that they were complained of, but it's not going forward for this reason. And that's an explanatory thing. If there were a complaint where it is within jurisdiction, the facts on their face do appear to be substantiated, then we would embark on a complaint investigation. And our very first step then is to notify the member of council in writing. We send a letter, we say, we've received a complaint on this date from this individual. Here is a copy of that complaint. Or we would, spell out in our correspondence, the complaint is thus and so. And we would give the counselor an opportunity to give a full response to that, a written response, or to meet with us, etc. And usually we provide about 2 weeks for that. So that's how we would initiate a complaint investigation if we were pursuing one. And in any event, at the conclusion, the counselor would also have every opportunity to see our findings in draft to provide further comments. So it's a longer process, but certainly the member would always be aware.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And when I heard 7, I kind of wondered, and I'm kind of glad I haven't heard from you. Having said that, is 7 a large number, a small number in the 60 municipalities you deal with?
It's not through the mayor. 7 is not an overwhelmingly large number. And in fairness, this report, it covers a period longer than 1 year. It's really since September of 2021 till December of 2023. So it's really virtually a 2-year period. And so that's not an unusual number at all to see.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Keaveney.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Janice, for being with us today. I wonder if I could ask you to clarify a little bit more the heading of staying in your lane. I think it happens to a lot of us, but I'll just pick an example. You run into a resident at the grocery store, and the resident will say, I haven't heard back from staff. And often we know that that means that the resident didn't really agree with the response they got from staff, so they come to us. And the resident says, can you get my road sprayed with calcium? So we go back to staff and find out that that isn't in the schedule. And then, and go back to the residents. So in going to staff and, suggesting that there's a particular road that maybe is really in need of calcium, have we overstepped?
Through the mayor, I think that we would not perceive that as overstepping, Deputy Mayor. That's really conferring with the staff, and who the appropriate staff is. If a member, for example, though, were attempting to say to the staff, listen, this needs to be prioritized. This needs to be put at the top of your list, and it can't wait until 2026 or whatever the program might, whatever the particular program might suggest through the schedule that staff is implementing. That might be overstepping. That is, I guess when we think of overstepping generally, we think of 2 things. One is where the member themselves purports to go out and do the work. And although not relevant to your example, Deputy Mayor, that can happen in municipalities where the member themselves goes out to conduct their own inspection, for example, or to take a look at, I'll come out and, almost taking shovel in hand to do work, that kind of thing, clearly overstepping. But also where a member, for example, reaches to, and much more typically, enforcement staff or public works staff and says, I just want this done. I really don't want to hear any reasons or schedules. I just want it done. That is really an improper exercise of, there is no authority for that member to be doing that. So that's also an example.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks for the presentation. I have a strong mayor's question. Now, we of course don't have a strong mayor. We have a very good mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, where were we? Question is, can a majority of a municipality's council file opposition to a strong mayor's decision to end a staff member's employment? And I hope I've worded that adequately.
Mm-hmm. You probably have, through the mayor, you probably have, Counselor, but I'm afraid I don't have the answer to that at my fingertips. That I would have to go back and take a closer look at whether, in other words, whether a strong mayor exercising those stronger mayor powers can have their decisions such as they are overturned by a majority of council, and I'm not as conversant with those as Jeff is. So full disclosure, I would have to go back and take a look to get an answer to that question.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, Janice, and thanks for your presentation. I'm hoping that the Integrity's Office can help with something which generally occurs here in this municipality. The deputy mayor, with her question to yourself, is kind of about this. So everything that we do here with our code of conduct and the way we do business, it all has to do with governance. What is good governance, and how does that trickle down to the ratepayer? So what we have, in my opinion here, those that go to the polls, they think that when they elect someone, that they are truly electing an extension of the administration. And there's a great deal of confusion in the ratepayers, those that live here. You know, what is the true purpose of council, and why doesn't council roll up their sleeves, and why don't we go out and why don't we look into this? And I've told you about this, and then it ends up sometimes, why do we even have council? And those can be really disheartening comments rendered. And we have seen in the last 3 or 4 election rotations that voter turnout is even dropping. And so does the Integrity Commissioner's Office have anything that you could offer to us here in our municipality about how we can educate the voter that we're not elected as an extension of the administration, and how we can impress upon them what good governance really looks like? Do you have any thoughts for us on that?
Through the mayor, that's such a good question. And I don't know that I would have any terrific advice to be able to give you. I think it's a daunting challenge. The reality that we see across the province is that members of the public, voters, citizens, ratepayers, would not for a moment imagine that when they elect an MP or an MPP, that those individuals are supposed to roll up their sleeves and run a ministry. There's absolutely no misunderstanding. There's no sense that we expect, for example, Minister Miller to start to look at the immigration status of individuals, et cetera. He's expected to set policy. Everybody knows that. But with local government, the confusion is really constantly present. So members of the public really do seem to misunderstand what their local elected officials are expected to do. And they do, you're absolutely right. They somehow often believe that they are electing somebody to get in there, roll up their sleeves and do the job. And the job is not picking up a shovel and filling potholes. The job is not going out and inspecting and laying charges on enforcement matters. The job is not sitting down and tabulating the salaries and figuring out that is not the job. And so nobody expects that to be the job of an MP or an MPP. And many expect that somehow to be the job of a member of council. How you get that message across is really the question. And I'm not sure that in, the 3.5 decades that I've been involved in municipal government, that I would say there's an easy answer to that. Most people are so busy running their own lives that they have little time to focus on anything like what's happening with municipal government, except when they have an issue. And that's really the only time that they pay attention. So they have a personal issue about the road right in front of their house, or, those kinds of very personal issues. That's when they pay attention. So I'm not sure I have an easy answer for how that educational piece takes place. It may be that, it would be trite to say, publish some information, put it on the website, et cetera. How many people have time to read that information? I think it's probably just on a one-on-one basis. When people raise a question, you say, I will bring that to the attention of the appropriate staff. That is my job. That is my role. And certainly when we're looking at bigger picture issues, I will take your comments into consideration when we're looking at dealing with whatever the issue is. It's kind of that one-on-one education is the only way that I think it can be done.
Are there any other questions from council? And staff, do you have anyone wish to raise a question at all? Okay, well, look at Janice, thank you so much, and give our regards to Jeff, and also thank you for your help through the year, because I think most of us have talked to one or the other of you, and we appreciate your support.
You're very welcome. Thank you for taking the time today.
Okay, bye for now. Deputations, we have none today. We do have one public question, and Mr. Michael Ashmore is here with a question, and if someone will turn his mic on, I'm just going to remind you that you have 2 minutes, or,
Thank you,
within
Mr. Mayor.
reason. Yes.
Good afternoon. Madam Deputy Mayor, Council, thank you for allowing me to speak. My question is concerning the land treaties and the way they apply in the local council. The 1818 treaty paved the way for pioneer settlement in eastern Grey County. October 17, 1818, the colonial government signed a treaty with the Ojibwe Nation for a tract of land that totaled 1.6 million acres. This territory provided lands which became the southern and western portion of Simcoe County, as well as the area which would become part of Dufferin County. However, of importance to Grey County historians, this treaty also included land which would become the townships of Artemisia, Collingwood, Euphrasia, Osprey, Croton, and St. Vincent. St. Vincent is part of the 1818 treaty. The town of Blue Mountains recognizes this. They were part of Collingwood, I believe, and their land declaration solely relates to the 1818 treaty. Now, I've read a land declaration for the town of Meaford, which relates to Treaty 45.5, which was 1836 and was made by the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. And their territory that they claim goes way over to Collingwood. And it appears the township of Meaford may have become confused in adopting the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation as beneficiaries of the land, or the owners of the land previously. Now, it is clear to me, and I hope it becomes clear to you, that St. Vincent Township was not Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. So any claim therein is moot at this point. It cannot be Treaty 45.5, because that treaty was after 1818 treaty, which established the original boundaries as the Sydenham-St. Vincent Township line. It's interesting to note that the range is in St. Vincent Township, and yet the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation pretend to have some rights to partnership with TCE in their current proposed power storage plant. I'm asking this council, can we clarify exactly where we stand and change the land declaration to reflect Treaty 18 in St. Vincent Township? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Does anyone have any questions for him before he steps down? Did you have a question, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for being here, Mr. Ashmore. It's a bit of a lot to absorb right now, so I just want to thank you for your comments and ask staff if they could please look into this and understand from that research, perhaps we need to make some changes to our land acknowledgement. I don't know at this point, but I would like staff to, and it looks like Mr. Smith wants to comment.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think if council wants to look into this further, then I think I would need a notice of motion to revisit the land acknowledgement policy and associated land acknowledgement, because it is something that's been adopted by council formally already.
And if I may, Your Worship, thank you for that, Mr. Smith, and I will bring that notice. We did just revise our land acknowledgement at the county level and had some really interesting education in relation to that might be valuable to this council as well.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kettner, and thank you, Mike. The first one was the 1818 treaty, and what was the next one? Did you say 1836?
Correct. That was the 45.5 treaty.
45.5 treaty it's called?
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks, Michael, for coming forward. I'm just wondering if it's possible that council could receive what you have stated this afternoon in writing. Certainly, we heard what you said, but I just wondered if.
I think I have it in writing and I can.
Okay, all right, yeah, I'd appreciate taking a look at that.
Other questions? Just in response, Michael, first of all, I think that we're revisiting the land acknowledgement from the standpoint that I think there's a lot of debate now on both sides about whether or not this isn't a bit perfunctory and whether there isn't a better way of forwarding truth and reconciliation through a better understanding of a lot of things. And secondly, I do have a line on somebody I think who could clarify this, and I think it's very important that we do, and we shall.
I thank you for that. Just do you mind a supplementary comment?
Sure.
Owen Sound quite simply says we are beholden to the indigenous people with whatever treaties relate to this land without being specific.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't mention tribe. I don't believe they mention specific tribes either.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're into motions and bylaws for decision, and there's really only one item on our consent agenda. So I think I just need a mover and a seconder to put that on the table. Moved by Councillor Forder, seconded by Councillor Bartley.
I think we've skipped council inquiries, Mayor Kentner.
I beg your pardon, council inquiries, and because there are
Not
some.
that we need to have any, if you'd like to just keep moving, but.
Sorry. We're just moving along too smoothly here. I believe, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and just two, I think, probably quick ones for you, Mr. Smith. The red chairs, are we going to have the red chairs back for public pleasure this year?
Not in the form that we've seen them over the last decade or so. We had to remove the chairs mid-season last year because unfortunately there was some safety concerns about some of them. They'd been out for 10 seasons, give or take, and needed some maintenance. And we were not able to put them in all of the same locations that the Red Chair tour that we'd previously had, stated that they were in. So we've taken that information down off the website and taken the chairs in this year, but we are starting to get them repaired and updated with the intent that we'll launch a bit of a new program as part of the Canada Day celebrations this year, which we're hoping will involve some members of the public and some local art and things, and then with the intent that they'll be back as sort of a full program for next year, but there'll certainly be one available at Canada Day, I think, and I suspect if we want to go on for the Sesquicentennial event in June, we could probably get there as well.
Other questions, Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and this will be to Jessica. And I know you'll be able to give us a good answer on this. I'm hoping that we're going to be receiving a report on two sort of semi-related issues. One is from my person beside me, Mr. Forder, when he was looking for a different crosswalk sign, some lights, something different, when we're going to get a report when that might be implemented across Sykes Street there at the crosswalk. And the one that I brought forward myself about maybe a different awareness system. So both of them have to do with traffic. Unless I ask for you, Jessica.
Yeah, so what I thought, which I can give you a random update on, which isn't what you're asking, I don't think.
Yeah.
But maybe it is you had asked about the intersection behind Dairy Queen. That's in my mind as an operational item. We are currently actually gathering data using our traffic counters because we're soliciting an engineering response on what to do to make the intersection safer. And they wanted traffic data. So we're currently we had to collect it in one direction, now the other direction. So it's in the works. So as soon as we have that back, we will definitely have a report for you.
Through your worship, for the Sykes Street crossing, we have engaged a company. They have ordered the parts, and so we're just working on getting the timing of when that work can be completed. We're hoping it's within the next month, but it will all depend on weather and their timing of being able to do the work.
Great. Any other councillor questions? Okay, then moving on to the consent agenda. I just need a motion to put this item on, and the recommendation is that Council of the Municipality of Meaford adopt the 2023 Lakeview Cemetery Master Plan as a guiding document. Moved by Councillor Forder, seconded by Deputy Mayor Keaveney. And discussion. Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just have one question concerning the cremation lots that are still available. I understand, according to our report, we have 2 or 3 years space left. Now, is the municipality working on increasing that number, hopefully when needed in a couple of years' time?
Through the chair, yes, sir, we are. So the intention of an infill strategy, which was the next step in kind of the process of looking at using the space that we have, included identifying locations for additional cremation space. And it will all happen within the next 2 to 3 year time frame to ensure that we don't run out of space.
Thank you.
Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. So with regards to the master plan, it's not listed as an actionable item, but there were several comments that related to the reintroduction of swans at the pond. I just wanted to know if that's something that is going to be implemented. Is that something that has to come across council's desk for approval? I only ask that because I'm certainly not in favor of having pond ornaments, live pond ornaments like swans, because of the ethics of it all. I just want to know, is that something that is going to be done behind the scenes and swans might appear, or is that something that council has to make a decision on?
Through the chair, in my personal opinion, is that swans aren't on the radar this year. There's a lot of things going on with the cemetery, the fountain work. Like, there's a lot of things that are happening there this year, particularly. It's also not easy to just get swans. I don't know how to say that better. There's a lot of regulations that come with it. So yes, if we were looking at introducing something like that to a property, we would need to have support for that to happen.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. And just to add to Mr. Forder's, there is 2 wild swans in the Bogner Swamp. I passed them today in case you're interested. I was once a licensed swaneer. I had swans, and I do not think that it should happen either. So thank you.
And even the mayor doesn't think that anymore.
I feel like I would need to point out that I'm not sure if it's the law here, but I mean, we are still in the monarchy here, but in Britain, all swans are owned by the king, and it is treason to kill a swan. So, just to bear that in mind as we talk about this.
Councillor Bell. Councillor
Thank you,
Bell.
Mr. Mayor. To just to show the folks here in the listening audience of how well that we get along as a council onto each other. Councillor Bartley, do I have to refer to you any different now that I know you're a Swanner? Swanee?
No, that's an ex-Swanee.
An ex-Swanee. Thank you.
Moving right along. Are you ready to vote on this? And I'd just like to quickly thank staff. This is a very comprehensive report, very badly needed, and it looks like a good future ahead for Lakeview Cemetery, which is one of our finest assets. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next, items for consideration, and we have, I think, we have two items here, and the first is the recommendation that Council of the Municipality of Meaford 1 approve the award of tender Facilities 2024-16 Meaford Hall Condenser Replacement to Simcoe Refrigeration Limited for $355,795.70, including the municipality's non-refundable allocation of HST, and two, authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into the necessary agreement. Can I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Greenfield, seconded by Councillor Uhrig. Discussion? Councillor Uhrig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions on the condenser. The new location of the condenser, just curious what that's going to look like. I know some of the events that happened down there. It's an interesting thing to have off the side of the building, and it's not exactly friendly, but just wondering how we're going to kind of deal with that location, what it's going to look like, and how it's going to be hidden.
Through your worship, that's a great question. My understanding is that the fenced area currently has some of the equipment for the condenser, and so we'll just be utilizing that same area. The equipment, as with most of HVAC equipment, has advanced a lot and takes up a lot less space. And so we won't be necessarily taking up any more space in that location. So it shouldn't necessarily change visually what you see outside of Meaford Hall.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, your worship, through you to Victoria. Almost $56,000, a considerable amount of money. It is underestimated, and that's the good news. Do we have any idea of the lifespan of this unit? I mean, is there a 3-year guarantee? 20-year guarantee would be better, but I don't. The previous one didn't last all that long, did it? I could be mistaken of that. I just wondered what we might expect from this one.
Through your worship, I can get that information. We definitely have it. I just don't have it offhand. So I can pass that information along to council. I know that some of the issue with the existing unit is that some of the parts we can no longer get. And it also has Freon, which no longer complies with regulations. And so if a failure were to happen, we wouldn't actually be able to replace it. And so based on its current condition, we are making sure that we don't lose air conditioning in Meaford Hall, because we recognize the risk that would be for that building. But I can get the information on what the lifespan of this particular unit is and pass it along to council.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kettner. And being an ex-large condenser owner, there's very few moving parts on these, and the fluid that goes through them has oil in it. There should be no issue getting 20 years out of it without any, maybe a fan motor going or whatnot, but they last a long time. Thank you.
Councillor Forder.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. When we look at the financial impact, there is mentioning that the remaining $34,200 says any remaining funds will be utilized as a contingency for the project. Just want to know, assuming that there are remaining funds at the end of this project that are unspent, what reserve or fund would they go into afterwards? Just curious to know where that additional money would go. Thank you.
Through your worship, this project was budgeted through our facility budget, so it would go into our facility reserve fund.
Councillor York.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, last question I had was, this would came through the canoe procurement, that group. And I realized I didn't really know as much about that. I'm just curious about a couple of things. Maybe just give a little brief on how that works. Because do we see all the bids? Is it the lowest bid taken? How does that kind of work that we end up settling on whatever bid is settled on?
Through your worship, I guess there's a couple different ways that we can go about it. So depending on what the product is, Canoe through LAS has gone through the procurement process, and they have either identified one or multiple successful bidders. And through that process, then we have the capability of either going to one or multiple of them. I know on this project, we did get multiple quotes, and Simcoe was the bid we decided to go with based on price. But essentially they've gone through the procurement process for us. They also have it available to municipalities throughout Ontario, which allows for pricing to be more competitive than we would probably be able to see if we put the bid out ourselves, because through Canoe, essentially, these companies are getting the opportunity for many municipalities to utilize them. And so typically the pricing comes in lower than if we individually as Meaford put out that same contract. So we do see the bid documents from the Canoe process. If we want to review them, or if we feel we have any questions about them, they are available to us. And depending on what the product is, sometimes they only have one product available through the Canoe process, and sometimes they have multiple.
Any other questions? Are you ready to vote? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And the next item, be it resolved that bylaw 2024-14, being a bylaw to appoint council members to committees and boards, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. A mover and a seconder for that, Councillor Bell and Councillor Porter. Discussion, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just wanted to go back and say that I'm really pleased with the changes to the committee structure. I think aligning them with our priorities makes great sense. My question, though, is in relation to the Heritage Advisory Committee. And thank you, Councillor Forder, for stepping forward to chair that committee. But typically, we've had a second representative involved with that group. So I just was curious to know, do we feel comfortable going forward with just one councillor this time around, or are we going to try to encourage another member to step forward for that committee?
I think very much up to you. The mayor and I put this together based on the responses that we got from all members of council. The layout as it is there, I think puts 2 people onto every committee, or rather every one of you except for the mayor has 2 committees. So it does balance out. For both the Accessibility Advisory Committee and for the Heritage Advisory Committee, only one person listed that as amongst their top 5 preferred committees. So I certainly didn't want to suggest just randomly picking somebody, and I don't think the mayor did either, but if council wants to add, we can add.
My thought was, given that I am the retiring chair, that and that would be an ex officio member, that I would probably try to attend as many of these meetings as possible, especially in the initial stages, to support Brandon in this role as chair. That was my thought anyway. And of course, I'm pretty interested in that topic. Does that help with your question?
Your Worship, thank you. I'm glad to know that you'll be there and provide some transition from your role as chair over to Brandon. Yes.
Okay, Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I did a little calculation and I reflected back on myself back on 2014. In 2014, I sat on 2, the BIA and the Wagner Hall. And I thought I was busy back then. I calculated how many working months we have on our term, and I come up with 30. Back in 2014, if I had 30 months remaining with regular council meetings and those two boards I sat on, I'd have been at 115 meetings in 30 months. We've got a 50% increase in the engagement that we are doing with our residents. 50%. For myself, for the boards that I'm on, in the next 30 months, I have 173 in 30 months. And that's not if we have special meetings of council and closed session, other things. So I just wanted to say, Mr. Mayor, that I think that whenever we have a time to comment with the folks that are out there in the community, we definitely can tell them that this council and this sitting for the remainder of our term, we're a council that definitely wants to be engaged with the people, and the number of committees that we've got and the new committees that we've got, I think they're outstanding. So I have about 173 meetings to go to. But they're all going to be good, Mr. Mayor. They are all going to be good, and they're all worth our time and our energy to do so.
I'm just going to say ditto. Thank you. I agree with everything you said. Any further discussion? If not, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. There are any councillor motions? I don't believe. No notice of motion. Deputy Mayor, you do have one.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I will bring forward the notice of motion to revisit our land acknowledgement and hopefully to include within that an education session for council, just to better understand the treaty situation and who we should be acknowledging, and some language that might be appropriate for the land acknowledgement going forward, as well as when it's really appropriate to read it.
Okay, there are no motions for decision at this time, so I think we move on to adoption of minutes. And we have the council meetings of March 4th and 11th. Be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford hereby adopt the minutes of the council meetings held on March 4th, 2024 and March 11th, 2024, and the closed meeting held on March 11th, 2024. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Forder, seconded by Councillor Bartley. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Moving into communications, I believe Councillor Greenfield, you have something that you would like to bring forward, or?
We did have a meeting of the Source Water Protection Committee last Friday, and it's a busy committee. Just another one. But if I could, I do have a few things to mention, Your Worship. One of the first things that came forward was the approval of a well at the Minto Pines subdivision. This is bringing on a new well 1A to replace well 1. Minto Pines is approximately 35 homes. They're all on this particular new well, or will be, and they're all on septics. Now, Minto Pines is in the very southern area of our source water protection area. It's actually in northern Wellington County, and but that is where the headwaters of the Saugeen River originate. It's just northwest of Harrison, and yeah, it's one of our areas. Also, other new wells, Chesley, well 4, that's being reviewed for coming into duty. Also, a new well in Teeswater proposed, and a new well in Durham proposed. So these are all drilled wall sites, but similar to electricity, water is in great demand. Couple more things. It was brought to our attention that the Ministry of Health and Public Health Ontario are proposing to close 11 public health laboratories and gradually discontinue private drinking water testing. Places like Hamilton, Kingston, Orillia, Peterborough in Southern Ontario are on that list, and there are two others in Northern Ontario. Thunder Bay is one. It looks as if this could end up meaning that well owners will have to use a commercial lab to have their drinking water tested. That the suggested cost there could be as much as $50. Now, it's not something you have to do too often, although in some cases it's certainly advisable. This seems to be completely contrary to what Judge O'Connor advocated back in 2000 concerning the Walkerton tragedy. So that's a little bit scary. The Grey Sauble, Saugeen Valley, North Bruce Peninsula Source Water Protection Committee, try making an acronym out of that. We have four part-time employees, the equivalent of 1.8 full-time employees, and that has remained the same for quite a number of years, long before I got on the committee. Just a couple more things. It seems we're hearing from a number of source water protection committees that the Ministry of the Environment, MOECP, are quite slow to respond to communication to our various committees. The average response to an email is 3 months. So I think our municipality is doing a pretty good job with communication. And just a couple more items. The Children's Water Festival, that's been going on for a number of years. It's held out in Chesley, April 14th to 16th, and there are about, in the 3 days, about 550 school children go through, and it has maintained its popularity, and everybody seems to think it's a great source of information, especially for the young people. Also, some talk about road salt and some concerns with the different winters, and it seems that ice and black ice are a little more common than what they once were, and that requires, in most cases, salting or a salt sand combination. And certainly the Protection Committee very interested in where we're going there. And just one more item that I never thought of being a concern, but apparently. And this is happening in some areas in Grey County, not immediately close to home, but not that far away. The importation of manure as opposed to fertilizer, commercial fertilizer. It's becoming much more common, and it's something we're going to have to look out for when it comes to water. Okay, I think that's all, Your Worship.
Thank you. I think you may have developed some questions. Councillor Urick?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's kind of tied to what Councillor Greenfield is talking about. The water situation, Councillor Bell and myself were both on the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority. And there was actually going to be a volunteer appreciation event at Meaford Hall on April 4th. Unfortunately, it's been canceled because there was very little uptake in terms of people responding with RSVPs to attend the event, which is really rather sad. Grace Obel is a really important organization in along with source water protection and making sure that they are protecting our water sources. And they do offer us lots of advice on a lot of developments, and they're a very important resource for us. They were wanting to do this in Meaford specifically because we're at kind of the end of it, that it kind of gets lost a little bit. There's a lot of stuff happens on sound and the other way. And so this was sort of a way to bring it into the fold. They are hoping to reintroduce this event. So hopefully late summer. So hopefully that will come about. So when that date comes around, we will try and make more of a push to make sure that this happens, because we should be, as to what Harley is indicating, water is vital, and the protection of it is vital. And we need to support this organization, and they need to be probably better recognized than they are for what they do. And these kind of events would at least go that way as an introductory process in that regard. So we will kind of announce that when it comes forth, but it's a little disappointing it didn't happen now.
Were there other questions? Councillor Bell?
Maybe not a question. Question for
Oh, sure thing. Go ahead.
Your worship, no, I didn't actually have a question in relation to that, except I would look forward to such an event. I do think in our agenda, the agenda online, we're missing updates from members appointed to county council committees and local boards. So, and I did have a piece to bring forward from communications, so I'll leave that order up to you.
No, I think I think we'll go back to that then.
Sure, we can absolutely do that. I think we took it out in collaboration with the mayor because it would have been the only item in committee of the whole, so it didn't feel like it was worth resolving in and then resolving out, and we could have give updates at the next meeting. But if council wants to do that, we'll just list it in the minutes, and that's fine.
I think with your indulgence, you know, the county news is only news so long. So I think you better tell us what the county is up to, and then we'll move on to the rest of this, if that's all right.
Absolutely. Or did you wish me to bring my communications item forward while we're in communications, or?
Yeah, I'm planning that actually. So, but I can come back to it if that's it.
Let's finish the committee things first and then do
Okay.
the communication stuff.
Okay.
So, just before we, was it like, did we have a library board meeting? I think, do you have a report? Let's do that. Okay. And then we'll do the Bogner Hall, and so go ahead if you like. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. So we did meet at library board meeting last Wednesday. We did tackle a couple different things, so I'll just go over that. We did review the Meaford Public Library variance report for January and February. It's early in the year, so everything looks all good. A couple things included in the staff reports is that the library is going to be getting a new device charging station next month, which is going to be very popular among the youth that visit the library very often. March break, the events were a huge success, and every program that was offered at the library was full. And the word was the library was buzzing throughout the entire week. And feedback from the visitors of all ages was outstanding. Coming up with the Volunteer Appreciation Week, the Meaford Public Library is going to be doing a little vendors market on April 18th. So there's going to be a number of stalls set up at the library with music, refreshments, decorations, etc. It's going to be a really fun time, and the library is going to be transformed in order to celebrate Volunteer Appreciation Week. The tax clinics offered at the library are completely full all the time, every time, and that has been an extremely popular service offered there. There are two new partnerships coming up for April at the library. One is with the Master Gardeners, which is great. Gardening is a very popular hobby in Meaford, particularly this time of year. Another interesting one is they're going to be in partnership with the Collingwood Climate Action Team. It's going to be a series of climate cafes, And I particularly like this because this is going to be an opportunity for people to get together and discuss concerns and opinions and feelings they have with regards to climate change and how that affects mental health. And for anybody that looks at mental health issues in youth, climate-related anxiety is one of the fastest growing mental health issues among youth and people of all ages. So that's going to be, I think, very valuable. A few stats for February at the library. There was almost 5,800 library visits, 121 facility bookings, and the e-library downloads are just taking off. 4,500 e-library downloads in February. February last year was 2,900, so that is increased significantly. There are some policy updates that were presented to the board. There's 4 policies. The policies are currently under review, and we will be updating the through the Policy and Governance Committee in the forthcoming weeks. But the 4 policies we're going to be looking at are the general gift policy, the teen services policy, children's services policy, and the collection development policy. And lastly, the Friends of the Meaford Library will be starting their summer concert series starting Sunday, June 30th. They are looking for new acts. So if there's anybody that is interested in participating in the summer concert series, please get in touch with Friends of the Meaford Library. Their email is friendsofmeafordlibrary@gmail.com. And I don't recall what date we're going to be meeting for next month, but that's all for now, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forder. Is there any thing to be said about the Bogner Hall minutes? Everyone saw them? Fine. Can we do the report on county council and then look at the correspondence? Yes. So go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. County Council met on March the 14th. After the minutes were passed, we did have Dr. Era address us. And we were pleased to know that at that time, there were no cases of measles in either Grey or Bruce counties. The health unit staff are certainly monitoring the spread of that disease carefully. The tax policy bylaw was passed unanimously in a recorded vote. Tax ratios, as we all know, apply for upper tier and lower tier municipal purposes for each property class. So the only change made at the county level was with the multi-res, because as we know, that started at 1.44 versus 1 for residential. So we're working towards equalizing that. So there was a drop in that multi-res. It's now 1.220600. Next, Isley Graham presented and spoke to the Pencil It In project that she and her partner Jaya Karuja have just completed. A book has been published, and this has to do with success stories relating to positive experiences immigrants have had in Grey County. The purpose of the project is to try and improve the retention of new residents to Grey. It was suggested that newcomers are often not aware of all the great services and supports that are offered here. I did share our initiative, which of course is the Hello initiative with a new language featured every week. So this week happens to be Hindi, so namaste, hello. From the correspondence list, a letter was discussed from the city of Sudbury, and this is of concern. The city had hired a contractor to complete a construction project. A terrible accident happened and an individual was killed when hit by a large grader. The city of Sudbury was found liable by the Supreme Court because they had hired the contracting company. I think this is a hard lesson for all of us, and I think inspection procedures and health and safety policies are being reviewed at a number of different levels. 2 large construction projects were approved by County Council. Both of them came in well under tender, which brings us a savings of $2.3 million. The Director of Paramedic Services, Kevin McNabb, spoke to response times for 2023. We're all really proud of our paramedic service. Even with an increased call volume of 6.8 and that's that amount higher over 2022. Kevin has been able to take the most critical CTAS 1 standard to meeting the target of 6 minutes, 54.67% of the time. And that might not sound like a lot, but if you consider the geography of the county, that really is quite significant. In Meaford, that stat is 63.64%. So within 63.64% of the time, an ambulance will be at a life-threatening scenario within 6 minutes. 40% is the target required by the ministry. Council approved the request to order 4 new ambulances ahead of the 2025 budget, even though we just passed 2024, since the wait time for delivery is 20 to 24 months. There's only one supplier approved by the Ministry of Health, Demers, and this is a problem because they basically have a monopoly on all the ambulances. The current cost of an ambulance is $253,463.81, and this is a 10.2% increase just in the past year. So concerning, but there's nothing we can do about that because there's only one supplier. And over to you, Your Worship, if you wish to add anything.
No, that was an interesting session, and I think we are extremely fortunate to have the ambulance service that we do have, and the demand is growing rapidly, especially with more people arriving in the area and our sort of top-heavy demographics. So I think the challenge is going to be it's taking more depots, more ambulances, and more staff. And I think that we're going to come to a point where it will likely get out of sight in terms of the cost. So that's going to be a concern. Looking at the correspondence list, are there any comments or yes, Deputy Mayor Keaveney?
Thank you, Worship. I wanted to bring forward a discussion on item number 44, which is the motion from Quinte West. They have a letter addressed to the Right Honorable Justin Trudeau, and they suggest that they are in need of $28 million to complete their West End trunk sewer main, and they also need an additional $56.6 million to upgrade their Trenton wastewater plant. So sounds familiar, right? So we are pretty much in the same situation, and we do understand, of course, that the province allotted $200 million for these types of infrastructure projects, but with a maximum ask of $35 million, that only allows 6 communities to receive financial support. So the request is for additional funding to be made available for municipalities for this purpose. So I suggest that we support the motion of Quinte West.
And can we just call for a seconder on that? Yes, it's seconded by Councillor Bartley. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Councillor Greenfield?
Thank you, Your Worship. Number 40 on the correspondence that came to us from Chatham Kent, and it concerns a letter being sent to Premier Ford and MOECP Minister Kangin. And this concerns the Blue Box collection, and in particular collection for ineligible sources, and there are quite a few of them, businesses, places of worship, daycares, campgrounds, internal areas of municipal owned buildings, and not-for-profit organizations such as shelters and food banks. As it stands right now, the legislation is not going to provide any funding for those sources, and Chatham Kent is asking that the province revisit this. I think everybody was hoping a few years ago that the Blue Box conversion was going to save municipalities and businesses and so on and so forth, some dollars, and the way it's set up, it may not be happening. So I'd like to move that we support that letter from Chatham Kent, if I may, Your Worship.
And is there a seconder for that, Councillor Forder? Any discussion? Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. And I don't know if this is a Jessica question or I've never understood this from day one, why they're going to separate it like that. I know I've got involved with business and whatnot. So now we're going to be paying two different people to drive around and collect recyclables. Is there any idea? I know this is a far-fetched, why they would do this? Separate it like this.
Through the chair, unfortunately, I am unaware of what the rationale is, and since the beginning of the program, it's just been identified this way, and the ineligible list has changed a lot. It was a lot more all-encompassing at the beginning, and things have been removed over the last couple of years of transition. I mean, we might be paying for someone else to collect ineligible sources, or we might not be. That is a decision that we ultimately will have to make as a municipality, whether we're funding that collection or they're funding that collection or whatever in between might look like. We still have a couple of years, and it'll have to be something that we're starting to talk about towards the end of this year, just to see where everything's at that time. But it will be a big decision for everyone, and we're not alone in that. Everyone is making the same decisions.
Yeah, I know we're not alone, and I fully support Councillor Greenfield's motion. Is there somebody we could talk to? You talk to, I'll talk to them. I need to know the rationale because it just doesn't make any sense at all.
Through the chair, if there is, I would gladly also talk to them. We do meet as municipalities with circular materials fairly regularly. I'm going to say at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. There is the ability to pose questions to them. They can provide information back to us, but specifics on why, and everyone asks the same questions. Ineligibles, can these things be removed? Can these things be removed? And some of them have been, some of them haven't been. What their calculations are, I don't know for sure, but we can continue asking the questions for sure. And when I get more information, I'm happy to share it.
If the mayor will allow me to indulge my cynical side for a moment, unfortunately, there are quite a lot of regulations that come out from the provincial government that don't make a whole lot of sense and seem to have a gap in them somewhere. My cynical side on this one would say that the people who are responsible for collecting this stuff, a huge amount of the product they produce goes through commercial places like fast food restaurants and grocery stores and so on, and so they don't want to have to pay for that. And they are fairly hefty with their lobbying dollars.
I think we'll find out in a big hurry just how many ineligible sources we have in our municipality once that they stop being picked up. Yeah, so it's just more downloading, and isn't that really the province's main platform? Let the municipalities do it and pay for it.
And I mean, as Jeff says, we're not required to. In fact, we've never been required to pick up commercial recycling for free. That's just been something we've done as a municipality. We could make a decision at some point in the future that says, nope, if you're ineligible, you've got to organize private garbage pickup. That's a political decision that I can imagine will be very challenging to make, but it is possible.
Is there anything else? We need to vote on that, so we do. I don't think we have voted on the motion. Okay, it's moved and seconded. All in favor? And that's unanimous as well. Anything else on the correspondence list? Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mayor Kent. Not on the correspondence list. Basically, can I jump back, Mr. Clerk, to the county council talk? So to Deputy Mayor Keaveney. So you're reducing the multi-residential rate from 141 to 123. So obviously that has to go somewhere. That's going on the residential rate, then it won't be one. And if that happens, could I ask the treasurer, it doesn't have to be today, tell me what that's going to cost our taxpayers?
I will look to Val for further comment. The issue has been that there've been two rates, one for existing multi-res and one for new multi-res. So that hasn't been fair. So they're trying to equal that out. And that will, impact other rates for sure. And I will look to Val, but yes, it will have a small impact on our residential rates. I don't have a percentage in front of me because we don't have that much existing multi-res in Meaford, but we do have some. So I don't know, Val, if you have any numbers you can put to that.
I don't have numbers currently right now, but what all it's doing is the county has a list of ratios which we use when we calculate our tax rates. So the multi-res is being reduced by 25% a year till they can get down to the 1%. So that's going to transpire over, say, 4 years. What happens is it's kind of a shifting of all taxes. So that ratio just kind of gets swallowed up in all of the other ratios. So some will go to residential, some will go to commercial. But it'll be very minimal in all of them because we do not have that much multi-res, but I could let you know exactly what that is at a later date.
Councillor Urick.
Mr. Mayor, as long as we're jumping all over the place, let's go back to the correspondence. So the item 50 on the correspondence list was a letter from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. Excited to invite you to take part in the Ontario's 5th annual Provincial Day of Action on Litter. I was going to ask the Deputy Mayor, I don't know what day the Rotarians, I'm assuming, are going to do the normal cleanup day. Our community it's a really great that our community does rally behind Rotary in doing that. I find it very odd that they're doing it on Tuesday, May 14th, Tuesday not being a terribly convenient day for people that working want to participate. And I'm wondering whether the Rotarians recognize this kind of in concert with this, or it's obviously we can recognize this, but not necessarily do it on that Tuesday.
Your worship, if I may respond, Rotary certainly will be doing their day of cleanup and it's always on a Saturday. And I will confirm in an announcement for our next meeting, but I believe it is Saturday, May the 4th. And that will be the typical baggy day in partnership with the municipality. But I will provide further details on that at our next meeting.
And have we completed our agenda to this point to everyone's satisfaction? I'm going to move on. I'm going to suggest maybe a short recess, and then the recommendation is be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford goes into a closed session in the boardroom with the interim CAO and deputy clerk in attendance to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and specifically nominees for the 2024 Community Builder Awards. I'm going to adjourn us at this point.
Just a move and a second and a vote, please.
Sorry.
A move and a second.
Yes, please. A move and a second.
Closed.
Councillor Bartley, Councillor Forder.
And all in favour.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll say.
Okay. And resuming our council meeting this afternoon, I just want to, reporting out, tell you that we only discussed the matters we went into closed session to discuss, and that was the 2024 Community Builder Awards. Now we have one last piece of business, our confirming bylaw. The recommendation be it resolved that bylaw 2024-15 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Meaford at its regular and special meetings held in the month of March 2024 be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Do I have a mover and seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Greenfield. All in favor? That is carried. And I'll declare this afternoon's meeting adjourned.